And a short time ago, I was joined from Newcastle by the Climate Change Minister, Combet. Minister, the Productivity Commission report finds that carbon pricing in Germany and the UK boosted electricity prices by 12% and 17% respectively. Is that what Australians have to look forward to?
Well, no, what the two key things out of the report are that there is a lot of action going on in the economies of 7 of our major trading partners to reduce pollution. That's the first point. In fact, over 1,000 different policies were identified. But the second important point that relates to your question is that, of course, the cost of those policies can vary very significantly. And in particular, the Productivity Commission has made absolutely clear that the cheapest way in an economy to cut your carbon pollution so that it has the least impact on electricity prices, for example, is through a market mechanism like an emissions trading scheme. And that's a very important finding from this report today.
So does that mean that under your scheme you can rule out that we would see electricity price rises of that magnitude?
Well, when we produce the final modelling and the whole of the package, the electricity price impacts will be there for everyone to see, as well as what the government plans to assist households meet any price impacts. And we've been very clear that at least half of the revenue from the carbon price will be used to assist households, and particularly pensioners and low and middle income households.
The report only examined 8 countries. What point is there in using the actions of those 8 countries to justify action in Australia when their economies are so different to ours?
Well, our economy is certainly different, and we've got to design a carbon price mechanism, of course, that suits our particular circumstances. But nonetheless, I think you'd agree that it's important in the public policy debate that we're having that we've got some more facts on the table. And here we have the Productivity Commission, an independent body, has had a look over the last 6 or 7 months at the economies of 7 of our major trading partners to identify what policies they have embraced to reduce carbon pollution as part of their efforts to tackle climate change.
But I just wonder, Minister,
it's very important, this point, including Australia's policies. There's 1,000 policies that have been identified in the economies of our major trading partners, and this is in an environment where, of course, other people, such as Tony Abbott, are running around saying nothing's going on.
But I just wonder, Minister, if people are sitting around their dinner tables tonight going, "Oh, sweetheart, oh my goodness, we're falling behind Germany. Guess we'd better get behind this carbon price."
Well, I think that's rather silly, actually.
But what I'm saying is, do you think it's really a persuasive argument that's going to change Australians' minds about whether or not they support a carbon price?
Well, that's one of the issues that's been in debate, and now we've got some facts on the table. I think that should be respected. The Productivity Commission's an independent body. It was asked to go and have a look at what carbon pricing methods there are in the economies of our trading partners. It's gone and done that. It's catalogued 1,000 different policies, many of them more effective and less effective than others, also more costly and less costly than others.
Australia is heavily dependent on coal production. The Australian Coal Association released research yesterday showing that none of our competitors in coal production are applying carbon taxes or emissions reduction schemes. So is a carbon price going to put Australia at a competitive disadvantage?
No, it will not. And you just made the point to me a moment ago that, of course, you've got to take into account our particular circumstances in Australia. And one of our circumstances in Australia is that the coal industry and the LNG industry are contributing the fastest growing category of greenhouse gases in our economy, and it is not credible for us not to include those important sectors within a carbon pricing scheme. If you didn't, what you'd be doing is asking other sectors of the economy, like the manufacturing industry, to bear the cost of the pollution reductions. And to achieve it at least cost, we need to include the major sectors of our economy. On the coal industry specifically, at an example of a $20 per tonne carbon price, the average liability for each tonne of coal mined in our economy for its methane emissions would be about $1.60 per tonne. And that's in a context where steaming coal selling for more than $120 a tonne, and coking coal in particular selling for more than $320 a tonne. You know, people like Tony Abbott are running around saying that it's going to be the end of the coal industry, the sky is going to fall in. I mean, he's the best Chicken Little you've ever seen. But in fact, this is a manageable economic and environmental reform, and we predict that the costs will be modest.
Minister, on another matter, as a member of the Labor left, how comfortable are you with children being put in detention in Malaysia?
Well, I support the government's policy, and I'm looking forward to the conclusion of the agreement with Malaysia, because I think it'll be an important step in us dealing with what is a very complex and difficult problem. And I know that my colleague, the Minister for Immigration, Chris Bowen, is working extremely hard on that, and it shouldn't be assumed that Chris Bowen doesn't have the same concerns as other members of the community on this issue. He does.
Do you have concerns about children being in detention in Malaysia?
I've got complete confidence in what the Prime Minister and Chris Bowen are doing in negotiating with Malaysia, and I think we should wait to see the outcome of those discussions.
You gave a speech last year in which you said Labor needed to return to its core values of social justice, compassion and equity. In what way is sending asylum seeker children to an uncertain future in Malaysia compatible with those core values?
Well, Labor is doing its best to represent those values by trying to avoid people getting on a boat and coming across the ocean, and we've seen what tragic consequences can result. So I've got complete confidence in our policy position, and as I said, in the Prime Minister and the Minister for Immigration in pursuing this policy. And on the broader point that you're making, I think Labor is doing a lot to demonstrate its commitment to social justice and equity. And in my own portfolio area, one of the most important issues of equity for future generations is that we tackle this problem. You know, people running around saying we don't have to tackle climate change, there's nothing we have to do, are leaving a huge risk for future generations. And what we've got to be attending to is our responsibility to play a part internationally to tackle climate change by reducing pollution, and exercise our responsibility for future generations in our own country. Australia's got a lot to lose if we don't tackle climate change. We're talking about intergenerational equity here, and it's why I think that Labor should be proud of what it's endeavouring to achieve.
Greg Combet, thank you very much for making time to speak to us tonight.
Pleasure, Leigh.